So Frothlings, you might have just seen a little bit of a saga on the main channel about trying to qualify for the United States Disc Golf Championship via their Monday qualifying. Lens cap, that should be a mini for me. I'm going to do it in the bag in this video, talking about the discs that I chose to put in the bag from my trip from Denver, where I live right now, to North Carolina, where I was vacationing, and then South Carolina, where the tournament ended up being, which is basically at sea level. I think it's like 500 or 600 feet above, versus here at 5,000 feet. I had to basically change most of my bag. Some discs you might recognize if you've watched some videos of what I normally throw, but I brought all these and everything that's actually in the bag because it's interesting to know what's in the bag and what's not. First off, and kind of saliently, are my putting putters. I have, these are actually the putting putters that I didn't end up using because the 4 that I brought thinking I was going to bag were these Banana Butt PA3s. I have these 300 fractals, which have basically been in my bag since I first ran the Banana Butt stamp. And then I had these pink ones that, just because I think they look different and they're nice and shiny, I was really thinking I was going to throw them. But interestingly, after doing what Gannon Burr does and doing his routine and washing the discs, they were a little too slick, and the nice beat-in feel that I had of these, they were still plenty overstable, and I ended up putting fine during the Monday qualifying. For the most part, got a little tired at the end of it, but overall, the putter didn't seem to be what let me down. If you want to check out that Monday qualifying video, please feel free to do that, and I'll link it at the end of this one, the actual round. But these are my 300 fractal PA3s, really solid putting putters. I decided to go with those after putting with them, but I brought 8 others because I just kind of practiced putting. And now they go back to the basement where they belong. The other discs that I didn't end up choosing we'll get to as we go through the speeds, starting with putters and approach discs. I didn't want to overcomplicate things as I went to a new place. I only had basically one day to practice. I arrived on Saturday late. I had Sunday a little bit to train, and then Monday I woke up at 5:30, started my drive at 5:57 or something like that, and I got to Rock Hill, South Carolina at around 9. It was a 3-hour drive from where I was staying. And so I didn't really have a lot of time to figure out some discs. I got a couple throws in with all of them. And that prep video you can also check out at the end of this one. But the discs that I ended up bringing did have a couple duplicates. I knew that basically I'd want a straight to flippy putter, I'd want a straight to overstable putter, and I want an approach disc that was pretty overstable. I've been throwing chicanes a lot, which are the finish line approach disc, but they're a little bit of like a glidey zone. Not quite a zone SS, more overstable than that for sure, but if you just injected a zone with a little bit more stay in the air, that's what a chicane is, which is really good in the mountains. It's really good up here in Denver, but as I was getting closer to sea level, I wanted something a little more overstable, had a little more bite, and didn't have as much glide, so I could trust it to get to the ground better, since there's more glide at sea level than there is up here. So the 3 discs that I ended up bringing were a Watt, which I had in this Fission plastic and in this plasma plastic. This one is in my normal bag down here in Denver. This one's actually in my bag in the mountains, and I ended up going with this one, partially because it's a little bit more different. To go from Denver to sea level, it's definitely different, but to go from a bag that I'm typically playing at 8,000 or 9,000 feet down to sea level, I'm not really gonna think it's gonna fly the same, and I didn't. And so I ended up throwing this, I don't even know if I threw it a single time in the actual thing. But my plan was to throw this on kind of like hyzer flip up shots. They would get a little turn, but mostly a straight putter, super solid, but I ended up choosing the Fission one. I brought 2 Envies. I had this Envy. Oh, it's under the sink. I kind of lost it for a second. I had the Eclipse Envy and a Proton Envy. This one's just a little more overstable, and it's my old OG Shattered Van Run, which is super fun. I really liked it. Should have thrown it well, but unfortunately, other things happened. It's hard because it seems like it's such a disc thing, but this is really just my body not knowing how to throw with my foot not taking any force, which is very annoying. But I chose this Envy over the Proton, a little more overstable. I prefer the feel of the Eclipse Envy over this. And then last, I had some zones. I had this Mega Glow zone that Discraft ran in conjunction with Infinite, and this zone that AB gave me. It's a Z zone. It's a heritage zone. I'd thrown this in my bag a little bit at the end of last year. I think I actually threw this on the island on hole 17 last year when I tried to qualify with Gannon. So this one in the bag, got some pretty good upshots with it, and that was pretty solid. The Glow Zone, also a little more glidey and just a little more flexy, and I like the stiffness of that Z Zone, and it's not too slick like some other Zs. So that was fun. I also brought just a really fun, super light inner core that I made with Jesse in a video that'll come out at this point in less than a month. I just basically threw that for funsies, didn't actually put it in the bag, but brought those discs for my putters, didn't end up using them, and those are the 3 that went in my bag. Next up, mid-ranges. I only brought 3 mids. I knew that I wouldn't need to throw them very much. I actually threw them more than I expected on this course. And the one that was like the most superfluous by far that I definitely didn't need was this Mana. I think I actually could have used a mid-range that was not this understable. I have the Buzz and the MD5 as my other two mid-ranges. The Buzz was super straight, would have worked very well for just like this amount of hyzer, pop up the flat, maybe get a little drift, finish straight, super point and shoot mid-range, put it on hyzer, it's gonna stay hyzer, put it on anhyzer, it's gonna hold it. MD5 worked great for some forehands. I could have used it on a flex backhand, maybe on hole 1 or some other things, because it's a nice smaller diameter mid-range, kind of almost a putter diameter, pretty overstable, a step up from the zone, which is why I chose that. It could have been a Swarm, it could have been an MX1, it could have been a number of other ones, but this MD5, especially with the Lucas Carmichael stamp on it, did some work, and Lucas ended up winning the qualifier, so big shout out to him on that. The Mana, though, is basically 2 steps more understable than the Buzz. If you have the Buzz and the Buzz SS, that's what I should have brought, something in that category. And this maybe was like that one day, but it was in my bag for a lot of the 2024 season. I ran it for the Pacific Northwest swing, and it was cool because it's like my stamp or whatever, but I should have thought a little bit harder about getting something that's gonna just kind of pop up and maybe get a little turn from my stock hyzer, because this, when I throw it on a stock hyzer, does that. And then eventually it will come out of it if you give it enough nose up and height, but this was a little unusable on the course. I shouldn't have brought that. That was a mistake, but I didn't bring anything else, so that was in the bag. Next, fairways. I don't throw 7 speeds much. It's something that I probably will want to get into, especially as I move to places a little more wooded. 7 speeds are money, but I brought a decent number of fairways to kind of see what I wanted, and I ended up with 3 fairways and 2 kind of utility guys. The 3 fairways that I brought, I thought I was only going to use 2 of, but kind of similar to the Mana Buzz situation, just more usable, are the Roman and my Signature Series Sphinx from this year. My Sphinx ended up being obviously pretty flippy at sea level, really nice flight. I could put it on a lot of hyzer, have it flip up to flat, maybe get a little turn. I threw some great shots that were all too low in this round. So many of my shots were like, man, if that's 10 feet higher, that is perfect. Similar thing with the Sphinx, pretty flippy, but very useful. I thought it would be more pop up a little bit, but it was a little more understable, and that got a little more turn. And this Roman was great because it's kind of the old PD mold, I believe. It's 10403 of the numbers. I can throw it hard and flat. Well, I couldn't really throw it hard, but I could throw it flat, and it'll stay flat for a while and get some fade. I could trust it under some low ceilings. It still gets really good distance. It's got a good amount of dome on it for a 10 speed like that. I really liked throwing this, but when I was figuring out my discs, I realized that this Dynasty, which I thought would be a contender against the Roman, was actually in between these 2 discs, the Sphinx, the Dynasty, and the Roman, and it was kind of perfect for a little bit of hyzer, flip up to flat. If I throw it pretty hard, which unfortunately I tried to do a couple times and didn't work, if I throw it flat, it will drift for a bit and then finish straight, whereas the Roman, if I throw it flat, it will just kind of hold flat, not really turn too much, and then fade a little bit harder. So this Blitz Disc Golf Halo C-Blend Glow Dynasty is becoming one of my more favorite discs. I really, really like it. Maybe something coming soon that you can snag of mine with something in this plastic. I have not run a disc in forever, and maybe there are going to be some drops to end the year, which will help my move, but also just kind of coincided with when stuff was happening for me. So this Dynasty, solid. I threw some really good shots. My best shot of the day, I think, was on hole 14. Unfortunately, couldn't capitalize, but threw a really beautiful shot with this bad boy, and it saved me some strokes from not going to B some other times. And those were the 3 fairways that I had. I maybe could have used a 7 speed, but I'm just not used to it. The rim is very comfortable for me. I just haven't thrown it very much, so I'm excited to mess around a lot more in the new year and just continue trying to get better and playing a lot of disc golf and with my own bag, not only on the channel because I'll have a little more free time to do so, and that'll be really helpful. Next. Oh, also brought another Sphinx, of course, because they're so beautiful, and I had to bring 2. I didn't know which one I was going to want. These black ones and the ones that have a little more dome, which you can check on Infinite. If you want to snag these, I'll, of course, leave them linked down below. But these ones are typically a touch more overstable. They have a little higher dome, and so I didn't know which one I would like. Maybe this could have worked, but I prefer the feel of the flatter ones, even though they are a little flippier, so could have worked, but I ended up going with the other. Next, we had 2 options each of these 2 discs. I have a Scepter and a Captain's Raptor. These are what were in my bag. This purple Scepter has an ace on it in a tournament at Ultra Disc Golf, a tournament that I actually won in April of this year. I think my last win. That's pretty clutch. I kind of forgot that I won an NBO tournament this year that wasn't a flex start. So, wow, this has been quite a year, man. Having kids is crazy. Have a kid. I have 1. This is nuts. But yeah, this Scepter was nice. It's very much an overstable 9-speed, but a very workable one. Kind of what a Sexton Firebird is for a lot of people. This is a pretty beat in. This is a disc that I'm excited to move down to sea level with and just see how workable I can understand it and get it to be. And it's just very comfortable in my hands. I'm very used to it. It's just something that I can just kind of pop flat to flex. I might have to run some Sea Blend Scepters if this is the type of plastic that they're in, or maybe even the new Jolly Launcher, just because they're so good feeling. So Scepter, money disc, but it's not quite as overstable as you might need. It's definitely 9403, maybe even 9402.5 sometimes. Not quite that overstable, but still plenty beef. But the cap wrap is that next level up. And I put the Jawbreaker Flex in the bag because of these other two that I brought. I brought a Halo Scepter, which is a little more overstable than my Sea Blend one. It kind of is closer to a Captain's Raptor, more like a true typical Halo Firebird. Plenty of beef, but still not quite a Captain's Raptor overstability. Kind of the more nose bead and more aggressive shape and bluntness of the cap wrap is always going to be a little more overstable than a non-flat top Firebird, in my opinion. But I wanted a little bit more difference because I was also more used to the purple one. This one, I don't know, I'm not as comfortable with it in the hand, so I didn't end up taking that. And then it came down to the Z Swirl cap wrap and last year's 2024 versus 2025 Jawbreaker Z Flex and Z Swirl. And I chose the Jawbreaker Z Flex because Winthrop is a course that you need to kind of hit and sit a lot of times. You need to throw shots that will not move too much if you put them in the middle of the fairway. And this one definitely has a tendency, because it's so overstable, it's even a touch more overstable than this one. I thought it was a lot more overstable, but when I was throwing them in the field practicing and like figuring out which one I wanted in the bag, they were pretty comparable, which I was a little surprised about. But this one, if it hits, I feel like it has a tendency more to get up and roll away. And maybe it doesn't actually do that. Maybe that's all in my head, but because it's in my head, I think I'll throw a little more timid shots, versus this, I can just trust a crank on it and let it get down. And that's what I ended up doing. That's what I ended up doing in the event. So that was money. Next is drivers, which I kind of wrote down on the plane that I thought there were 6 categories of drivers that I would need. I would need a kind of roller style driver, a bomber style driver. I called the roller my 6 driver, or my 5 driver actually, super flippy. Then the 4 driver would be my bomber driver, kind of throw it on some hyzer, have it flip up, have it drift, kind of what my Sphinx does, but goes a lot farther and is a 12 speed versus my Sphinx, which is a 9 speed. And then I would have the 3 driver, which is kind of hyzer flip up to flat, stay straight, get a little fade, or throw it flat, get a little bit of turn, and mostly fade. My 2 driver would be something that I throw flat and it never even thinks about drifting, or throw it on hyzer and just kind of my spike hyzer disc stays on hyzer and finishes on hyzer. My 1 driver would be kind of my overstable guy, where I could throw it mostly on hard flex shots and then flex out of it, and then maybe a 0 driver, which would be a utility disc. That ended up not being what I needed, especially because at Winthrop you needed to know your drivers, and I feel like I knew my drivers, I just didn't throw them as good as I could have. So it was kind of unfortunate, because I feel like last year in Monday qualifying, I didn't know my discs and I didn't trust that. This year I did trust that, but my body didn't let me throw the shots that I was trying to throw. So I only ended up rocking with these 4 drivers, kind of. I did bring these 2 as just in case drivers, but they kind of overlap with some of these, and we'll get to that. These are all the additional ones that I ended up bringing, and I actually thought that this was going to be the flippiest driver in my bag. This iBlend Wraith, they actually just restocked on Infinite Sight. I'll leave those linked below too. But this is a super flippy run of Wraith in the iBlend plastic. I really like how it feels. It's kind of flip up to flat, turn. I definitely can roll it, but I just realized I didn't really need a roller. There are a couple holes where maybe I could have thrown a roller, but it's not my comfortable shot, so it's probably good that it's not in the bag, so I'm not tempted to do it. And I got flippy enough shots with the next driver up in stability, which was the first driver in my bag, the iBlend Emperor. This is one of my favorite discs of all time. These things are so incredibly good. Also, maybe having something coming out sometime soon-ish, but it is such a far-flying disc, pretty understable out of the box. You could throw it on some hyzer, it'll flip up if you throw about 350 feet. If you throw 400, 450 feet, it'll flip up and give you a little turn. If you throw farther than that, it'll flip up and go and just stay going right. Really bomber driver for me, tons of glide. If you put it in the air, it will find its way to a stable finish. And I really liked that disc. Didn't get to utilize it as much as I maybe could have, but I still love you, buddy. Promise. So yeah, iBlend Emperor, money. I then thought I'm gonna need a disc that just flips up to flat. And the disc that I thought would do that was this disc. The S-Blend Garrett Girthy Swirly Emperor from some year. I don't really know. But I have a really cool one here. And this is actually a disc that I threw a lot at the USDGC qualifier last year. And actually birdied hole 12, a really hard birdie with it. Threw just a great shot. Was really thinking that this would be kind of that flip up to flat disc. or a forehand disc. But when I was throwing in the field, it was more similar to these iBlend Emperors, and I just preferred the glide that these had and the feel. And I haven't thrown this in a long time, and I didn't want to like have any past understanding with this disc kind of influence my thoughts. So I ended up just sidelining this. I thought it would be what the next disc actually ended up being, which was the interval, forged interval. Kind of an interesting plastic. It's definitely like, it's their premium plastic, but when people feel it, they sometimes are like, is that like a base plastic driver? It's kind of what I would consider like a pseudo premium, or yeah, pseudo premium plastic, where it's like definitely a premium plastic. It doesn't beat in crazy fast. It feels pretty premium. It hits and sits really well. It does skip if you need it to, and it goes very far. But this thing was kind of that perfect. Throw it flat, it'll drift a little bit and fade. Throw it on a little hyzer, it'll pop up a tiny bit. Throw it on a lot of hyzer, it'll stay on hyzer and push. Really kind of workhorse driver for me. I threw this one a lot, threw it pretty well. Could have thrown it more on some forehands, but I didn't really trust it. Fortunately, I wasn't throwing very far, but overall, this was a great driver for me. I did also forget, I did bring another iBlend Emperor here. It was between this one and the pink one, and the pink one won out. It was max weight. This one's got a little bubbling in the rim to lower the weight a little bit. But I don't know, there's something about the max weight one. It felt a little more consistent to me, so probably all in my head. Next up. Actually, it's not next up, it's this disc. Because I brought the interval. This is my Halo Emperor. If you watch my prep video, this was the disc that I threw into the playground. And it's a solid driver for sure. I just felt a little less comfortable with it than the forged interval. And if I threw the interval in the water, I had this in the bag as a backup. That's kind of the only reason that was there. Never ended up touching it. Next is the Concrete Conqueror. The Conqueror is the old PD2 mold. 12404 are the flight numbers. But this I have before some of my more overstable Emperors, because these concrete runs have a nice amount of dome. They have good push. They're incredibly workable on a forehand. It's one of my favorite driver releases of this year, because the Halo Emperors are fine, but for some reason they feel worse in my hand than the Conqueror. The Conqueror just feels more comfortable to me. So this was in that kind of 2 slot where it's gonna throw it flat, it'll stay flat, it's not going to drift at all, and it's going to fade. I could throw it on some flex shots if I need to. I could throw it on some flex forehands. And I had 2 of these that I brought. I just like the blue one a little more, so I put the blue one in the bag. Super money disc, use it on a lot of forehands. Great disc. Unlucky roll away on hole 18, otherwise, appreciate you, buddy. I also brought an S-Blend Emperor, which looks just like the iBlend, but it's not. It's just the Star S-Blend plastic. This is more overstable than those iBlend ones are by a good bit. And it's more akin to these Conquerors, but the Conquerors just feel a little bit better. I don't know exactly what it is, but that's why those are in the bag. And then next up, this was kind of that 1 slot. It's a Halo Glow Emperor, which typically are a little less overstable than a typical S-Blend Emperor. But I thought it was more overstable than this Concrete Conqueror. So I was gonna put this in like my 1 driver slot of that kind of pretty beefcake driver, but not utility. But I ended up kind of sidelining it with the other Halo Emperor that was in the bag, because I didn't fully know and trust that it was more overstable than that Conqueror. And it was kind of like, I might bring it out if it really feels like this just has to be the shot for it. But I just didn't get enough shots with it to know if it was different enough. So kind of was sidelined. And that brings us to the beefy boy. I thought it would be a Conqueror. It was not. It was a Halo C-Blend Emperor, Drew Gibson's signature series from this year. This is just an absolute meat hook driver. Whenever I put it in someone's hands who's like a really far throwing pro, they're like, wow, that's the best feeling driver ever. When I put it in my hands, I'm like, wow, that is very stiff and a little bit bigger for an Emperor and very overstable for me. So this thing was my absolute just yank over on Anheuser disc. It still gets good push. I could throw it about as far as most of these other ones because of the glide and the fact that it is an Emperor. It's not like it has a nose bead that's super dumpy. It's just a very overstable disc, so you have to throw it on a lot of flex, but if you get the nose angle right, it still goes very far. I ended up throwing maybe 1 or 2 shots with it, and it ended up doing what I wanted to, which is be an absolute crazy utility disc. So that was the last thing. I also brought towels, chalk bag. I think the dry fly chalk is what I used. He sent me out some bags. I don't have it in here, I don't think anymore. But rangefinder, and I'm using my European Birdie bags. And that was my USDGC Monday qualifying attempt. Everything I used. Now it's time to get back and just be home in Denver for a couple more months, and then the move to somewhere cool and a lot more disc golf. Thanks for watching, Frothlings. I will see you in the next one. Maybe, if you decide to watch it. Peace.